Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning, because that 10 pounds difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
Ilia, power puncher, boxer, low stance, versus Charles Oliveira. If someone gave you 100 grand to bet on that fight, who would you bet?
Ilia. But if you're asking me who I would want to win, I'll put Charles. I'll put my money on Charles.
Yeah.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Bo. Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does.
If Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's going to be a banger
They
fight.
don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed. So, yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it lightweight, though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. It's massive. So for him to cut to 145 seems almost like, how did he do that? But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up.
MMA experts have shared their shocking insights on Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria. However, Charles Oliveira said that Ilia is a tough and dangerous fighter who backs up his words with actions. He understands why Ilia wants to challenge others and sees him as a real threat. Charles explained that many fighters, after winning a title and feeling that belt around their waist, start thinking about moving to different weight classes. However, he warned that moving up to lightweight is risky because it is a very tough division. Even so, Charles made it clear that Ilia is strong and not someone to take lightly.
How do you see the chances for Ilia in terms of becoming a champion in lightweight, maybe fighting Islam Makhachev, and do you see someday you yourself fighting Ilia Topuria for the lightweight title?
Cara, o Ilia Topuria é cara que duríssimo, cara que fala e vem fazendo.
Ilia is a tough fighter. Someone who talks the talk and walks the walk. He's doing things, and I can see why he would want to challenge people. And I think a lot of people, he would be obviously a tough fight. And I think that what happens is a lot of fighters, whenever they get a belt and they wrap that, they have that belt wrapped around their waist, they start thinking up and down in the divisions, and you want to challenge things. But I think you have to be very careful when you're coming up to lightweight, because this is tough. This is a very tough division. But at any rate, I think he's a very tough and very dangerous guy.
On the other hand, Ilia Topuria said that facing someone like Charles Oliveira, who has 10 losses on his record, feels very different from facing an undefeated fighter. He explained that when you go up against a guy with that many losses, your confidence is on another level compared to fighting someone who has never been beaten. Ilia called Charles dangerous in both striking and grappling, but said the mindset of someone who has never lost is completely different. He said an undefeated fighter will not give up, and you would almost have to kill him to stop him. Ilia claimed that if Charles faces real trouble in a fight, he tends to go to the ground, sit there, and wait for the opponent to do something, which Ilia sees as a weakness.
Charles Oliveira, even this is what I was telling you before, like when you got 10 losses in your record, that's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 10.
Yeah.
Like when you walk in with a guy that has 10 losses, the level of confidence is completely different. It's completely different than when you walk in with a guy that it's undefeated.
Right.
He's a dangerous guy in the striking, in the ground game, everywhere you look at him, he's a dangerous guy. He never takes a lose. That's a different mentality. You gotta have to kill him to give up. He's not gonna even give up. You gotta have to kill him. In the case of Charles, if he finds some adversity, he's gonna go to the ground. He's gonna sit and he's gonna be waiting like till you end up the fight.
However, Paddy Pimblett shared that he believes Ilia Topuria stands a real shot at defeating Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He described Oliveira as someone whose chin might not hold up well, and said that having nearly 40 bouts means he's absorbed a lot of punishment. While he acknowledged Oliveira's ground game as dangerous, Pimblett also mentioned that Charles tends to take unnecessary chances. He pointed out that going from 145 to 155 pounds is a major leap that a lot of casual viewers often ignore. Since Oliveira has a similar frame to him, Pimblett thinks the difference in natural size could really show in a striking heavy contest.
Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning, because that £10 difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
145 to 155, it's a big difference. People don't understand that because they don't watch the sport or they're not involved in the sport. But that £10 makes a big difference. And especially, like, Charles is like my height. Ilia's like down here when I stand up. Know what I mean? So it's going to make a big difference.
Paddy Pimblett also suggested that Ilia Topuria may not be fully prepared for how big Charles Oliveira appears in person. He noted that smaller weight class fighters usually don't realize how physically imposing their larger opponents are until they're standing across from them, bringing up how people assumed Bobby Green and Michael Chandler would look more physically intimidating than they actually did.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. You know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, what, he's big him. Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
Moreover, Robert Whittaker remarked that the 155-pound division is currently the most entertaining in the UFC, especially now with Ilia Topuria joining the ranks. He mentioned Topuria's claim that the organization guaranteed him a title shot if he vacated the featherweight crown. Whittaker said that when champions switch divisions, they deserve to challenge top contenders immediately, though he also acknowledged that this can be frustrating for fighters who work their way through a difficult lineup. He concluded that the UFC will probably choose whichever scenario creates the biggest financial gain.
I think the lightweight division is the most exciting division right now. It's just death row in the lightweight division at the moment. Like the top 5, dude, that guard up there right now, it's just killers, man.
But especially with Ilia Topuria entering the mix, right? The whole big story over the past week was he obviously vacated the title at featherweight, but apparently he said the UFC told him, we promise you a title opportunity if you vacate. That's what he told Spanish media. Or I think he said as a backup he would fight Charles Oliveira. And now they've gone back and forth. What do you reckon, Rob?
I don't know what was promised or anything, but I feel like if you're in a lower division and you vacate the title, you should go straight to the top of the pecking order. I'd like to see him go straight into a title shot. Understandably, it can be tricky that way because there are a lot of guys, like, styles make fights. So if the champion of a lighter division has a better style to beat the guy in the high division, where's the fairness of that? Because that guy may not get through 10 guys to get to a title shot. He may not get through the contenders. Yeah, I just feel like there should be a certain amount of weight for being the champion of the division already. I can also see the side of the argument for the guys in the division that have been like, brother, like, I've had to slog, especially in the lightweight division, like, I've had to slog my way to the top of this division, and it is death row there. I think UFC's going to do what makes them the most money.
Michael Bisping analyzed a future matchup between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, calling Charles a fierce and forward-charging fighter who strikes with fists, knees, and elbows while also looking for submission chances. Still, Bisping noted that Ilia would be stepping into lightweight competition for the first time. He complimented Topuria's sharp boxing, punching strength, constant pressure, and solid Greco-Roman wrestling. He said it would not shock him if Topuria ended up winning that bout.
Ilia versus Charles Du Bronx Oliveira. We know Charles, he's a dangerous, aggressive son of a bitch. He's gonna walk forward, punch his knees, elbows, he'll lock on a submission. Ilia, this is his first fight at lightweight, and with the punching power of Ilia Topuria, the boxing that he has, the footwork that he has, and the Greco-Roman wrestling, it wouldn't surprise me if Ilia pulls it off.
Khamzat Chimaev gave credit to Ilia Topuria's skill and accomplishments in the UFC. He remembered training with Topuria at All Stars Gym before Ilia became widely known. Chimaev shared that even back then, Topuria was already performing at a high level in Brave FC, just as he was. He praised Topuria's intense dedication and big dreams, saying that it was clear from early on that Ilia would go far, and now he has reached nearly everything a fighter can aim for in the sport.
Очень известный сейчас боец. Ты с ним вроде как давно знаком. Он тренировался в Альстаре вместе, вот до еще его всей известности. Когда вот тренировки ты его видел, ты видел этот потенциал в будущем?
Ну, конечно, просто тогда, в то время, этот был он хорошим топовым бойцом в Брейве, как и я, мы оба там выступали. Видно было, потому что он такой пахарь и хочет добиться чего-то в своей жизни. И парень добился всех высот, которые можно в этом спорте добиться.
Islam Makhachev's coach Javier Mendez said he would place his bet on Ilia Topuria to beat Charles Oliveira, even though his personal hope is for Oliveira to come out on top. Mendez explained that Charles keeps his posture upright, which might play right into Ilia's boxing game that comes from a lower stance and applies heavy pressure. He noted that Topuria has a knack for landing accurate shots to the chin, which was evident in his bout against Josh Emmett. Mendes believes that in this potential clash, Topuria would likely find more chances than Oliveira.
Ilia, power puncher, boxer, low stance versus Charles Oliveira. If someone gave you $100,000 to bet on that fight, who would you bet?
Ilia. But if you're asking who I would want to win, I'll put Charles. I'll put my money on Charles.
Yeah.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk. Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does.
Javier Mendez added that he sees Ilia Topuria winning against Charles Oliveira because of Topuria's sharp boxing in close range and his ability to land powerful, clean punches. He said Oliveira's tall posture leaves him vulnerable and that taking Topuria to the mat would be difficult without using well-timed knees or front kicks. Though Oliveira has the advantage in length and can throw dangerous kicks, Mendez still feels that Topuria has more potential ways to walk away with the win.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and when he gets inside, he's going to use that boxing, and Charles' head's going to be up, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin on the inside. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk. And I think if Charles doesn't get him up the middle with knees or front kicks up the middle, he's going to have a hard time with his boxing against him, and he's going to have a hell of a time trying to take him down. So it's going to be one of those where Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does. But Charles can surprise us with his length, and up the middle would be really, really well suited for him. And the kicks too, body, head type thing, low, high. He could do really well with that.
Tim Welch also commented on a possible bout between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira before Topuria faces Islam Makhachev. Welch thinks it's a risky and possibly bad decision. He mentioned that Ilia said he had been assured of a title fight if he vacated the featherweight belt, although it's uncertain who made that guarantee. When comparing styles, Welch described Oliveira as an aggressive fighter who charges forward with wild knees and an upright posture. In contrast, Ilia uses a more grounded boxing style, and because of that difference, Welch believes this fight could be quite dangerous for Ilia.
It's a dangerous fight. Marab calls it stupid to make Ilia Topuria fight Charles Oliveira before Islam Makhachev.
How is that?
Ilia Topuria says he got promised that he would fight for the title if he vacates.
By who? The security guard outside his room?
Yeah, he kind of hinted that he got promised that. I feel like Charles, Ilia, I think Ilia might batter him. The way Charles comes forward with those reckless knees,
and he's got the chin floating up high too.
Stands up tall like a really tall Muay Thai guy, and Ilia's like a low boxer. That's a dangerous fight for Charles.
Joe Rogan said that Charles Oliveira is an absolute killer who can defeat anyone in the octagon. He recalled how Oliveira used to fall apart during high-pressure situations earlier in his career, but everything changed after he became a father. Rogan explained that Charles has turned into a fearless and determined fighter. He noted that many fans ignore his earlier setbacks, such as those against Cub Swanson and Paul Felder, and insisted that people should focus on what Oliveira can do today rather than dwell on the past.
If you go and watch Charles Oliveira, some of his earlier fights, it looks like he kind of like folded.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then something happened after the birth of his daughter where Charles Oliveira becomes this assassin.
Yeah.
He's just and he just has no quit in him. He's just an animal.
Yeah.
And it's just like everybody just forgot about that old shit. Like, no, he's the man.
Yeah.
And they forgot about the Cub Swanson fight. They forgot about all these other fights. They forgot about the Paul Felder fight. They forgot about those fights. Like, call that fight. What is he capable of when he's on?
Joe Rogan described Charles Oliveira as a total beast. He pointed out that some people seem to overlook how threatening Oliveira has become because of his past defeats, but the reality is that he's improved a great deal. Rogan stressed that supporters need to stop concentrating on who used to beat him and instead look at how much he has grown. He also reminded everyone that Charles joined the UFC at just 20 years old and has truly reached his peak over the last few years. Rogan thinks Oliveira has found his rhythm and now stands among the most dangerous fighters in the world.
Oliveira's a monster. People think of Oliveira as not being a monster because there's times that people have beaten him. But he got better. You got to accept that and not think of like when he lost.
Because so many people, who gets better at 35?
I don't believe he's 35.
No?
I think he's 33. And I also think that he got into the UFC when he was 20. But he came into his own over the last few years, which kind of makes sense. Like he figured it out.
MMA Guru and Demetrius Johnson both weighed in on the possible fight between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. MMA Guru said the matchup would be a massive pay-per-view event even without any titles involved. He said it's an exciting fight fight, but admitted there's uncertainty about how Topuria will perform at 155 pounds. Meanwhile, Demetrius Johnson revealed that Topuria is actually a big guy, walking around at roughly 191 pounds. Johnson said it's surprising that Topuria ever competed at featherweight and sees the move to lightweight as a logical step. He added that it's always fun to watch fighters move into heavier weight classes.
If Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's gonna be bigger.
They don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed. So yeah, I don't know how he's gonna do it lightweight though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. It's massive. So for him to cut to 145 seems almost like, how did he do that? But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up.
Henry Cejudo shared his thoughts on the fight style clash between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, saying that the matchup favors Topuria because of his speed and precision. He applauded Ilia for being able to blend his attacks well, throwing combinations that target both the head and body, and pointed out that he has knocked opponents out cold. Cejudo remembered how Topuria once got hurt in his fight against Jai Herbert at 155 pounds, but managed to bounce back and deliver a knockout, which showed his toughness and grit.
When I look at this fight, I think of this fight stylistically. I think, okay, the explosive power and the power in the hands, and it's crazy to say that. You have to go with more of Ilia Topuria, right? Ilia Topuria goes high, low. He can go to the body. He can go up top. He's been knocking people out cold. That means Max Holloway, 2 future Hall of Famers he knocked out. None of those guys went championship rounds. We saw him one time at 155 pounds where he did get hurt against Burns. Is that it? Against Jai Herbert. But he got hurt, he got dropped, but the matador in him, he came back and he ended up knocking him out.
Henry Cejudo noted that Charles Oliveira is a larger and more seasoned fighter at lightweight, having already battled top names like Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Cejudo highlighted that Oliveira is good at getting takedowns, especially using double leg entries. Still, he said Oliveira's habit of staying close might actually be dangerous when facing someone like Topuria, who thrives in those situations. Cejudo pointed out that this preference for close range exchanges could be a serious problem for Oliveira.
Charles Oliveira is the bigger fighter. Charles Oliveira has fought the who's at 155 pounds. I mean, everything absolutely changes, man, with Charles Oliveira taking down Michael Chandler, with Charles Oliveira taking down Justin Gaethje with those beautiful double legs. But I will say this, when I think of this fight, I always think of the distance that Charles Oliveira brings, and particularly he likes to be in close. And the fact that he likes to be in close with an inside fighter, it doesn't make sense.
Henry Cejudo emphasized that the person who must make the bigger adjustments in this matchup is Charles Oliveira, not Ilia Topuria, even though Ilia is moving up in weight. He said that Oliveira has been dropped by nearly all of the top fighters he's faced, including names like Islam, Gaethje, and Chandler. Cejudo warned that Topuria is not just someone who wins by technical stoppage, but someone who delivers full knockouts. If Oliveira fails to change his strategy, Cejudo believes Topuria could end up holding championship belts in 2 separate divisions.
So now is one thing, the person that needs to make adjustments in this fight, typically you would say the lighter fighter, the smaller fighter going up, but not really. Charles Oliveira has been dropped by just about everybody that he's fought, from Chandler to Gaethje to Islam. I mean, what happens when you go up against a dude that's knocking people out, not TKOing people, knocking people out cold like Ilia Topuria? So when I'm looking at this fight, I'm saying Charles Oliveira is the guy that has to make those adjustments. If not, it's going to be the double champ. It's going to be Ilia Topuria securing himself as a 2-division world champion.
Michael Bisping said Ilia Topuria has been extremely impressive all throughout his fighting career. He praised Topuria for showing strong self-belief and making his goals a reality, noting that Ilia has consistently finished his fights with dominant performances and rarely found himself in difficult situations. Bisping said Ilia has been the one in control and doing the damage almost every time he stepped into the cage. He believes that defeating Charles Oliveira, a fighter Ilia is expected to be favored against, would mark yet another major accomplishment. Bisping also clarified that he meant no disrespect to Oliveira with his comments.
I would say Ilia Topuria, given everything that he's done in the sport, the confidence that he's shown, the manifestation, as the kids say, but bringing it all to a reality, knocking out everyone in his way, doing it in absolute style, hardly breaking a sweat, not having to fight through any adversity, not being the hammer and the nail. He's just been the hammer, just hammering his way through everyone. If he beats Charles Oliveira, which I would assume that he's going to be the favourite to do, and that's with absolutely no disrespect towards Charles Oliveira.
So what are your thoughts on this? Share your thoughts in the comments section and make sure to subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video.